On July 14th, conservative commentator Dennis Prager published the following tweet. The news media in the West pose a far greater danger to Western civilization than Russia does. This tweet was liked over 12,000 times and retweeted over 5,700 times. However, this tweet was also attacked by many others, including such mainstream media personalities as Bloomberg's Ellie Lake, who called it the dumbest tweet of the summer. While GOP media strategist Rick Wilson stated, "This is an utterly shameful comment. What a disgrace." New York Times reporter Glenn Thrush weighed in with the following bit of snark. "I think you should test this thesis by moving to Moscow immediately and working for an anti-Putin opposition party. Enjoy." Prager's tweet clearly exposed a major dividing line in American public life. On one side are a sizable number of Americans who view the media class with absolute contempt. On the other side sits the oblivious media, utterly unaware of how huge swaths of the public perceive them. What is going on here? Since Donald Trump's election, the mainstream media has been on a virtual jihad to prove that Russia somehow colluded with the Trump campaign to hack the election and therefore steal it from the rightful winner and their preferred choice, Hillary Clinton. The goalposts for what actually constitutes meddling or collusion are seemingly never clear and constantly shifting. In the past, some examples of collusion could have been Hillary Clinton allowing the sale of Uranium-1, whose assets include 20% of America's uranium capacity, to Russia. When the deal was done, the CEO of the Russian State Atomic Energy Corporation, Sergei Kiriyenko, crowed, "Few could have imagined in the past that we would own 20% of U.S. reserves." Soon after, shareholders in this transaction transferred $145 million to the Clinton Foundation and its initiatives. Does this count as collusion? Or when Obama promised then Russian President Dmitry Medvedev that he would have more flexibility after the election. Medvedev replied that he would relay this information to Vladimir. Was this collusion? Or when a company, which had Hillary Clinton's former campaign chief John Podesta as a board member, received a $35 million cash infusion from an investment fund founded by Vladimir Putin. Is this collusion? Perhaps they are, perhaps they are not. When dealing with a crony capitalist country like Putin's Russia, it's hard to do business without working with former party apparatchiks whom are now mysteriously millionaires. But could you imagine how the media would be screaming if any of the above had involved Trump? Hacking the election is a more nefarious claim. What it insinuates is that the Trump campaign worked with Russian operatives to somehow tip the scales and steal the election from Hillary Clinton. This is the theory, but in practice, despite months of investigations and focus by all the mainstream media, the only thing they have been able to uncover is, in the words of Democratic Senator Dianne Feinstein, rumors, news stories, but not necessarily evidence. When it comes to the alleged hacking of the election, however, can anything that Russia has been accused of match the malfeasance shown by the media during the election? Did Russia force then CNN contributor and DNC chairwoman Donna Brazile to give the Clinton campaign debate questions in advance of her town halls with then-candidate Bernie Sanders? Did Russia force Democratic media pundits to hide the fact that they had ties to the Clinton campaign? Did Russia force Politico's chief political correspondent Glenn Thrush, yes, this Glenn Thrush, to get John Podesta to approve an entire section of an article he was working on? Did Russia force the Washington Post Dana Milbank to get opposition research from the DNC for his article, The 10 Plagues of Trump? Did Russia force the media to drop even the pretense of objectivity during the election? Did Russia force the mainstream media to do all they could to ignore the revelations revealed by WikiLeaks? As an example, the Washington Post ran an editorial stating, "Scandal! WikiLeaks reveals Hillary Clinton to be reasonable." However, there was no mention in the editorial about the disparaging comments her staff made about Catholics, Chelsea Clinton's worries about pay-for-play at the Clinton Foundation, and a $1 million donation from Qatar, a major funder of ISIS. All of these are damning, and yet they are the tip of the iceberg as to how the supposedly mainstream media colluded with the DNC to hack the election. These are not the most egregious examples though. Far from it. For that, in my opinion, we would have to go to the release of the Access Hollywood tape by the Washington Post. This tape was NBC property, and NBC executives knew about it for months. They refused to release it, however, as they didn't want to be accused of partisanship. However, 2 days before a major debate, the tape was leaked to the Washington Post. NBC never did any kind of investigation into the alleged leak, which gave a competitor a major scoop. Why? Because I suspect there was no leak to begin with. What this points to is that NBC News deliberately gave this story to a competitor in order to do as much damage to the Trump campaign as possible. Who needs Russia to hack an election when you have news organizations that operate like this? Throughout the entire election cycle to the present, the mainstream media has thrown everything they can at President Trump in order to delegitimize him. The only hammer they have left is their self-created Russian collusion story, and they continue to pound away on it ceaselessly. They have no evidence of any crime, yet they continue to hammer away in an effort to overturn the results of an election they didn't like. Could Russia have ever done more to undermine American democracy than this? Steve Bannon gave the press surprisingly good advice, but in its arrogance, the mainstream media refused to listen. This is why the Prager quote now has so much resonance among such a large part of the public. This should give members of the mainstream media pause, but self-reflection does not appear to be one of their strong suits. Perhaps self-reflection is impossible when you live in a media bubble. I don't know. What I do know, though, is that it would probably be a good idea for the disgraced members of the Democratic media complex to shut up and contemplate the number of likes this tweet received. When huge parts of the population see you as more of a threat to the nation than Vladimir Putin, you're doing something wrong.